Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Your body isn't a problem to fix. It's a system to support. From PMS to pregnancy to menopause. Ollie's Women's Wellness line is built on real science for every stage. No guilt, no stigmas, just science-backed supplements that work with you, not against you. Choose science over shame. Find support at a retailer near you or on ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back. It's Jay Scott. It's The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. We always do appreciate it. We always appreciate any review you give the podcast when you're done listening. Hopefully it's positive. We do appreciate the feedback. Don't forget, we are part of the Pantheon Podcast Network at pantheonpodcast.com, which is a great platform of music-related podcasts, including the Metallica Report, the official Metallica podcast. So please check out that and all the others. I'm sure you will enjoy it, being a music fan. Don't forget to check them out on social media, on Threads, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Pantheon Pods. And you can do the same on all four of those platforms with The Hook Rocks. Don't forget to search the Hook Rocks website, thehookrocks.com. And like, subscribe, follow on all and any podcast platform, and set your app to automatic download so you get the latest episodes right to your phone. We've had some incredible stuff going on over the last month or so. We just had Paul Jackson of Blackberry Smoke celebrate our 600th episode. We had Dee Snider celebrating the 40th anniversary of Stay Hungry. Michael Anthony, the former bassist of Van Halen. Lita Ford. We also had Richie Kotzen and Tyler Bryant of Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown, and Pete Dankelson, the great guitar player, music influencer on Instagram and social media, and many, many more. Like I said, we just celebrated our 600th episode, and we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. I'm really excited about today's guest. And as you guys know, I do episodes with stoner rock bands from time to time. I've had Green Lung, I've had La Chinga, and a few others as well. And I'd like to welcome in Ryan Gamey from High Desert Queen. They've got their new album coming out at the end of May. We're going to talk about that and some other stuff. What's happening, Ryan? How are you?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. That's quite a prestigious list of guests, so I appreciate you squeezing me in.
Oh, absolutely. It's not squeezing you in, man. I was hoping you'd come on. I love the new album. I've had a chance to listen to it. It's really exciting.
Awesome.
Great tone, great songs. We're going to get into that. But as we always do every time we have a first-time guest, we always ask the question, just like every great rock song has a hook that pulls you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or performance that hooked you on rock and roll. What was it for you?
Man, there's going to be a dozen of these that accumulate over time. But I do remember the first time I ever listened to anything heavy that I was drawn in was my brother, who's 6 years older than me. He came home from college. I may have been in, I believe, 6th or 7th grade. And he's like, hey, you got to check out this band I just discovered called Tool, who had just gotten going at the time. And he showed me Undertow, the record Undertow. And we listened for that from the beginning to end, sitting in his Ford Ranger truck, parked in our driveway because we didn't want to upset our parents, listening to the very, very heavy music. And that record really turned me on to a heavier genre of music that I then found hundreds, and countless bands since that band. Because I was not listening to that kind of music. I was raised on like jazz and My favorite artist at the time as a sixth grader, this is kind of strange. Well, my two favorite artists were James Brown and Tom Waits,
Oh, wow.
which I think is cool. You know, I still listen to them all the time, but that's what my dad listened to. So that's what I listened to.
Where did it go from there? Once you heard Tool and, they opened up a whole gateway of music, what was next, and how did you develop your passion for playing music?
So I think that when I got into Tool, I really, ironically, right away, I started digging into bands that I could find then. You know, this is back in like 1995 or so. So I couldn't really dive in on the internet or anything to find anything. And I'd go to the local music stores, and I dug around, and I started discovering a lot of the grunge music that really for me took off when I started finding bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. When I finally heard Soundgarden, that really took things to another level as well, because they became one of my all-time favorites. But that whole era, and then I discovered, just from Tool, I found an old bootleg that covered a Kaya song and called Demon Cleaner. And so that I immediately went to go find that record and just continued the wormhole of just amazing bands that I'd never like obviously the Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, those bands I could turn on the radio and hear them. I just never really listened to that genre. But then the allure of finding bands like Caius and Fu Manchu and bands that were not big at the time and you kind of had to seek out, that became like an obsession for me. I got a car, I could start driving. I was going to record stores and I was just thumbing through all the old CDs, whatever I could, tapes, what I could find that were like those kind of bands. I even found bands like Sasquatch very, very early on, like probably in, when they first came out, like early 2000s, and bands like Lowrider and Nebula, and bands that ironically I can call friends now. That just blows my mind. I was seeking these bands out, and now I've played with these bands, and we're all like friends. It's pretty surreal. So I'm enjoying the ride, as they say right now.
You mentioned something in that answer about driving to the record store, and that was part of the whole presentation. That was part of the whole process of getting music, right? You drive to the record store, you spend hours there. It wasn't just a quick 10, 15-minute thing. I mean, you would literally, that would be your afternoon.
It was an all day or at least a full afternoon thing. For me, if it was getting out of school, it would be, I'd be racing to get home before I got in trouble because it'd be too late.
Yeah. And when I talk to people, because I have a son who's 19 and my nephews, and I tell them that, they like, what do you mean you spent hours at a record store? I'm like, that's just what you did. You just thumbed through stuff. And if you thought the album cover was cool, you'd maybe take a chance on it, and you go out and you go home and listen. But the other thing that was part of that whole thing going on was when you got to your car and you had the CDs, you take out the CD and you'd listen, and then you just drive around wherever. Like there'd be no destination. There would just be driving around listening to the music. And I think that's why back then and generations before that had such a connection with music, because it really was a part of our lives that was tangible, that was an experience, that was everything all wrapped in one, where I think because of technology, it's missing today.
Oh, absolutely. I can remember, where I was on the road hearing certain things where I even had to pull over to be like, wow. And then I would, you get and grab the CD cover and you start looking to see, is that who's singing that? That's a guest vocalist, right? And you're going in and looking to try to find appearing, this artist or whatever. And there's so many moments like that with different bands that I've heard, or you taking a chance and you're with some friends and they're like, well, okay, what would you get? We're all like trying to go, what do we all get? And so, all right, I'm next. And we're driving around all day. You're all, all night, 4 or 5 hours, just so we could all listen to each other's record from beginning to end. And that's always been a big thing for me, is I like to, that gets lost now in the shuffle world, the algorithm world, where, you hear like one song. And believe me, I still I find out about a lot of bands due to playlists and due to algorithms and things like that. But I hear a song and I'm like immediately going to go check out the entire record. I want to hear from beginning to end, because that to me is there might be a good song, but what a band does collectively as an album, because that's what I was raised on. That's what we did. We listened to records from beginning to end, and sometimes those B tracks, B sides, what really spoke to us.
Yeah, there was no getting up and skipping it.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't skip anything until maybe like the third or fourth listen.
Correct.
You know, like you get a good feel for what the album was about. You kind of start to gravitate towards your favorites, and then you'd want to hear those more often than the others. And then you'd go back and listen to some of the things that maybe you skipped over after a few initial listens. But what's really cool about that is those songs that you did end up skipping, if you went back and listened to the album like a year or two later, you'd be like, oh man, this song is really good. It just hit you differently. And then you've got this whole new experience with the music. And I love when that happens. It's like rediscovering the album again.
I love going back to rediscover. And sometimes I've gone back to rediscover albums that I didn't like, or it didn't grab me at one point, depending on where I was musically in my life or just personally or whatever. And then I go back and hearing it and being blown away, even though you'd already heard the record before. That's happened to me, countless bands. One of my favorite bands of all time is Queens of the Stone Age. And when I went and bought their self-titled, first record the day it was coming out, because I was a huge Caius fan. Like I said, I discovered them through Tool and was huge on Caius. And I was so disappointed when I listened to that CD because it didn't sound anything like Caius that I just didn't listen to it like anymore. And then probably when their second record came out, I turned on when MTV2 was still playing music videos, and I saw the Lost Art of Keeping a Secret on. Like, oh man, it's a really cool song. And you had to wait until the end, to see who it was, who would tell you in the bottom corner. And it was Queens of Stone Age. I was like, what? I have one of their records. And I went back and listened to it and was just like completely blown away. Like, oh my God, I was just closed-minded or whatever at the time. I just wasn't ready to accept it, but going back and revisiting music, I do that all the time because you just never know what you're going to discover or rediscover.
Yeah, it was such a big part of our lives back then in terms of the time. Like we weren't distracted, like we weren't doing something else and listening to it. We were sitting down, whether it was driving and listening to it or in our bedroom and listening to it and reading the liner notes and doing all those things. Like we designated moments of our lives just to listen and not have anything else going on. And I think that's why there's such a rich, deep connection with the music that we grew up with and the music that connected to us with us at a very young age.
I agree. The album art and liner notes and everything else was all part of the process, right? The music was good, but we also longed to read what was said inside. I would always think it'd be cool to read like who they were thanking on the liner notes. I'm like, oh, I know that guy's in another band, and it was like you started seeing at an early age, even then I started seeing the connection of musicians in a scene, and never really fully grasped it, but was so amazed that, oh man, they actually know each other, or this guitar player from this band appeared on this record, and I always thought that was really awesome. And now that I'm in the scene, I can clearly see the connectivity and the family-like aspect that it is, and it's very, very, very awesome.
One of the genres, or probably I think the most prevalent genre that's really gravitated and grasped the album artwork, is the stoner, desert, doom rock genre, because most albums, 9 out of 10, are like so interesting and so like, wow, like what am I looking at? It's almost like that has returned, especially in this genre of what happened in years past. And it's part of the art. It is art when those album covers kind of connect with you.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of it is the age of some of these bands. Like, for example, other than our bass player, because our bass player is our guitar player's daughter, we were all 40 plus. So it's like that's where we came from, and that's what we want out of a record. And I think a lot of the bands are the same way in this scene. It's very important to the album cover, the art. It's very important to see that, the thought and what went into it, that it is thematic and it does relate to the record. And I think that it's such a thing now that we're all trying to kind of like raise the bar, like, oh man, that was rad. We got to do something. We got to top that, or we got to, we want to do this. And I think that's great. It's really, we're all in for each other. And I'm constantly reaching out to bands like, man, who did your cover art? That's awesome. I want to reach out to them. Maybe they'll do a tour poster for us or something, you know? And a lot of these artists kind of get used within the scene a lot. You know, we reach out to a lot of the same guys because there's some people who are obviously very, very talented and really get it.
Yeah, going back to that whole, record store experience, thumbing through, and then you'd find an album cover that just hit you like, what is this? This is so cool. And then you'd buy it based on the album cover. You had no idea what the band sounded like, but it was just interesting. And especially those Maiden records and Priest records from back in the day and all that, all those bands that were prevalent back then. It's looking at it on your phone just doesn't do the same as
not
it
at all.
when
Not
you're
at all.
when you're in front of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the new album out May 31st, and I've had a chance to listen to it. It is just absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about the album?
We are very, very proud of this record. Mainly because it's the first record we feel like we've written as a whole band. The first record was really my guitar player and I. We had been jamming with other musicians, and then I moved for work, and he lives in Houston. I live closer in the Austin area, so we're several hours apart. And it was just kind of us kind of going back and forth, sending guitar riffs to each other and then cutting things up and putting lyrics on it and vice versa. And then we got together with a friend of mine who was willing to track bass for us. And then Phil Hook, who's our current drummer now, who's a studio session drummer, we asked if he'd played in another band we had played with, and he came in to track, and we hit it off. And luckily in that studio, just his influence alone, we changed a lot of songs and kind of reworked some things in the studio. But now with the current lineup, having Rusty's daughter, Morgan, who's a phenomenal bass player, and then having Phil in the writing process from the very beginning with all of us, all these songs really came together. We start to learn, when we're writing for this person, hey, we know this is probably what, Phil will do here, what Rusty will do here, but really writing all the songs in the room together as opposed to sending a guitar riff virtually or whatever, right? We did everything in the room together. And what was really cool about this record as well is we were on tour for 6 weeks in Europe with one of my heroes, Mario Lalia and Fatso Jetson. And we got to tour with those guys, and it was really, really impressive to watch how they work and how they do so much improvising and creating on the fly. And it's really, really impressive. And then when we got back in the studio, we had been playing, the music, some of the songs, recorded in the studio we were working on the road, and we're playing them live. And so we walked in with a pretty good idea of how they're going to sound because we've been doing them for 6 weeks every night. We were like a well-oiled machine ready to go in and track. And then as we sat down and we plugged in, incredible studio, a small town here in Texas called Yellow Dog, really good vibes and atmosphere. And we plug in and we're getting levels just to, so we can track the drums and track the guitars and bass. Because we also had the idea to record everything in the record or in the studio live, like they did back in the old days, track everything live. No click track. We wanted it to feel like it speeds up, slows down, and moves like it's supposed to. And we were willing to leave imperfections in and all that stuff. And we wrote 3 songs the first night we were in the studio together, just because I think we hadn't written together in so long. It's all about playing the set. And those 3 songs are on the record and bumped other songs we took to the studio. So we've got some stuff ready for album 3, I guess, which is great. But it was really cool for us to walk in and create and write together and not worry about what genre, what it sounded like, what if it fit, whatever. We just really went with the purpose of writing music that we thought sounded good, something that we would listen to.
You mentioned being in the room and creating, and it's been a while since you guys were able to do that. What's it like reconnecting in those creative moments to have, to create music together, when you're in a room together versus online or, on a Zoom call like we are doing? What's the difference for you in creating music?
There's No better feeling than writing music in the room together with people that you care about and people that are, are all there for the same reason, just creating. We're not in there thinking about how, we got to write something that's going to make the crowd at a live show move, or we got to write something that's going to get a lot of listens on Spotify or whatever, right? We're literally in there just creating together. No egos. And I think the only time the ego goes away truly is when you are in the room together, just writing. And I'm very lucky as a vocalist where I get to kind of watch it all. And, I play guitar as well, but I can't keep up with these guys. They're way too good. But in the room creating in the room together, getting to like watch the song just because, we'll have these long jams, right? And we record everything. We learned the hard way that you record everything just in case, even when we're like in our practice room, jamming, because something will just come out, and sometimes you can't ever create it, as good as you did the first time. We've learned that the hard way as well. Even when you go back and listen to it, it's something about that creative moment. And, we were able to capture that in the studio. I felt like this time we're writing together, because we literally, there's 3 songs on the record that were written in the room, and we recorded them like right there. It was done. We didn't have to go back and we maybe doubled guitars, but that was it. We let it be. And, the being in the room and watching Rusty and Phil and Morgan just create musically and just letting it build, and, knowing when to like, hey, let's take it down. Rusty, you go. It's just that time to get you that solo in there, or Phil just totally taking the tempo up or down. Right. It's really, really fun to watch. There's no greater feeling. I mean, playing live is a close second, but creating is by far in the room together the best thing about being in a band.
With this album, Palm Reader, out May 31st, what was the biggest difference on this album, creative-wise, music-wise, than the previous record?
I think with all 4 of us being in the room together writing, the influences, I think, came out more, as opposed to just with Rusty and I kind of having our influences. Now you're hearing, I think this album has a lot more groove to it. Maybe a little bit more, I'll even venture out and say funk. Like it's got some funk to it and some move to it. And that's totally Phil. That's his influence on drums and the way it grooves with Morgan. When you change your rhythm section, Phil was there in the first album too, right? But he didn't really get a chance to write as much on that record as this one. And you have a rhythm section that's so locked in and talented as they are. It kind of let all of our influences really come out. I come very much so from the 90s. As we previously discussed, the music I was listening to, Rusty, our guitar player, is such an 80s metalhead. And then we've got Morgan, who's actually the youngest in the band, but she's the one who like even showed her dad what like stoner and doom and desert rock and all that is, right? That's kind of where she's at. And then Phil has this funk influence. That's what he really listens to. So I think this album has a lot more groove to it. And I think that it's more raw and live sounding. We also intended to do that. We recorded it live, right? We wanted it to sound not super overproduced and with a wall of guitars, guitar tracks and orchestras in the back. And it is guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, 99.9% of the entire record. And that's exactly what we wanted to do.
The song Death Perception is my favorite. I love that song. Now, who shared vocals on that with you?
Ironically, that's one of the 3 tracks we wrote in the studio on the fly. Just came out, and we within like literally an hour's time, we had that song written from beginning to end and tracked. And the fun thing about that is we had a chance. We've been fortunate enough to tour and go around, and when we played in Fuzzfest, it was hosted by the Truck Fighters in Stockholm, Sweden, in December of, that would have been 22. That's right, 22. We got the chance to play with the band Galpa. They were right after us, Swedish band. and we hit it off. So we could just tell they were like the Swedish Us, like our vibes were exactly the same. All the band, we had the same sense of humor, even though a lot of things we get lost in translation, and we hit it off. And then we also got to play with them again in Desert Fest in London, the summer of 23. And got to say hi. We're so excited. We'd kind of kept in contact, right? We got to see each other. Emma Noslin, who's their vocalist, is obviously a phenomenal vocalist. She's got incredible range. Her stage presence is amazing. And we've always we share notes like, man, what were you thinking here? And she'll ask me the same. It's really kind of a cool relationship and a friendship we've built. And I had asked her when we went in the studio, well, actually, and when I saw her at Desert Fest, I was like, hey, we're going to go in the studio when we get home. I would love to have your vocals on the record somewhere. She's like, oh, yeah, tell me, I'd love to. Then when we wrote that track, we decided she's way too talented to just have her be a guest vocalist, that she needs to be a true featured artist on the record. And we gave her that track. We had written it. We were still fine tuning things in the studio, like on other songs. We're like, hey, here's this track. What do you think you could do with that? And would you
get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card with unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business? You'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
At Ollie, we've got wellness down to a science. From PMS to pregnancy to menopause, our women's wellness line offers science-backed support for every stage. No judgment, no shame, none of the stigma. Just supplements designed to meet you wherever you're at. Ollie, choose science over shame. Find support at a retailer near you or on ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
be willing to? And she sent back a day later. She wasn't saying any words. It was just melodies, like singing kind of the melodies and humming things. And I wrote back and go, hey, did you just write out the song in Swedish? Because I couldn't tell, I don't know. Her sound, it sounded like it could have been Swedish. I don't know, but she was just making up sounds. And so what I did is I then wrote lyrics based on what it sounded like she was saying in English. And then we kind of went back and forth and tweaked some melodies and tweaked some words, I wanted some things to make sense. I don't want it to be totally esoteric lyrics. I wanted it to have kind of a meaning and have a point to it. And so we went back and forth a few times, and it was not very much longer after that song was completely done. She's incredibly talented, and it went so fast. We've already talked about how we've got to do something like this again.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was a very powerful moment on the album, because the music is, stoner rock, the whole genre. It has its core in the Sabbathy and the metal, early parts of metal and also grunge too as well. I think people forget about that too when they talk about stoner rock. It has a lot of those elements in it, but this album just really extends a lot of that stuff too, and really kind of gets into the layers and the texture of what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we never set out to be a stoner rock band or desert rock, but whatever, we even call ourselves Texas desert rock, just because, no band wants to be pigeonholed into a genre. Right. And we totally embrace being called a stoner rock band because some of my favorite bands are stoner rock bands. Right. We just feel like we're heavy rock and roll. And, I think that the stoner rock moniker has become this large umbrella of anything that is, heavy, has 90s roots, or even like some of that old Sabbathy roots. And it's just not mainstream. And I think that what's great about this record, like the first record we just wrote, and we were labeled Stoner Rock, and then it's cool. We've been embraced by that community, and it's an amazing community. And like I said, but when we wrote this record, we weren't like, hey, we're a Stoner Rock band now. We got to write Stoner Rock songs. We just wrote songs that we felt sounded good. I mean, we've got songs on the record that we get really funky. We take it way down. We get very heavy. We get kind of super dark. I mean, it kind of goes all over the place. And that's just because it's what we wrote at the time, not because we don't set out to write, hey, we need an album that sounds like this. We just wrote, there's some songs that didn't make this record because we didn't feel like, obviously we collectively picked what we thought were some of the best songs, but there's songs that didn't make it that just didn't fit collectively as a whole, because we wanted that album experience. Like we talked about in the past, what we did back in the day when we popped that record, a CD in, we wanted it to have a feel from the first second to the last second, have a purpose. And these 7 songs that we recorded fit what we wanted for this record.
When you think about the genre, right, I understand what you're saying with being pigeonholed into a genre. I mean, we talked about what music was when we were younger. There really wasn't a lot of genres. It was basically rock, hard rock, metal, and thrash. That was basically it, right? And punk rock.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now there's all these different subgenres, and it's kind of good in a way, but it kind of also, I think it also throttles a discovery for some of the artists, because I think the stoner rock name is sometimes counterproductive to exposure, because someone who doesn't, get stoned may not want to say, I don't want to listen to that. What are your thoughts about the genre and the title and the name and the definition of it?
Yeah, I completely agree. We see this all the time. I think that it can sometimes. I mean, obviously, it's opened the doors for us to play on these great festivals and become friends with all these bands that are in the same genre. And it is a very amazing family-like community in the stoner rock community. It's the best community I've ever been a part of. Right? Everyone is the friend. They always whether the meanest looking, friendliest people you'll ever meet. And just awesome people. And but I do know that, I mean, I've experienced it firsthand, that just by being a stoner rock band, there's some people that won't listen to us. Like, oh, I don't even know. I don't want to get involved in that stuff. And then they hear us, they go, oh, well, that's just, that's heavy rock and roll. Well, that's just, that's heavy rock. Like, exactly. So it's a double-edged sword, right? It's opened the doors for us for a lot, but I think that it does turn people off because, I mean, they may have never even heard of that genre. It's not a mainstream genre by any stretch of the imagination. But heck, you've even got Josh Homme who gets credited for creating this genre, and he's like, I didn't create that. I don't even know how that happened. Someone said stoner rock, and boom, there you go. That's what it was, So even he didn't even want to be, put in the genre, and he's kind of credited for creating it or being part of creating it. And so it's an interesting, dynamic. So we don't care what we're branded. We just, when people ask us what we are, I'm like, hey, we're a hard rock band, and sometimes we'll say Texas desert rock, because that's going to even more confuse and alienate people. So why not?
I agree with you on the community. I've been to a few stoner rock shows, and I think the last one I was at was 1000 Mods and Valley of the Sun in Chicago.
2 of my favorites.
Yeah, 2 great bands, and just the community, that the crowd is, and that's, I think, one thing that reminds me of the community of back when we were younger, is how dedicated and how loyal the fan base is. Like, you're not just a casual fan of desert rock, stoner rock, and stuff. Like, when you're a fan of it, you are deep in it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Just like we were deep in our love for rock music, metal music back in the day. And you just, sometimes when I'm watching a show, like at that show I mentioned, I just watch the crowd, and they're just everybody. There's very little filming on phones. There's very little, people taking pictures. Everybody is so mentally and physically present at one of these shows. It's not like anything else in today's music.
No, I agree. And the engagement level is so high. It's a beautiful thing. And we talk about it all the time as a band, how we can play a show in front of 40 people, and it's the most beautiful, intimate thing we could possibly do than playing in front of a room of 2,000. If those 40 people are fully engaged and totally into what, we're doing, and are there to see us, and there to see our genre or whatever, it's a beautiful fan base. And the not even more beautiful thing is when we go play places like, Desert Fest Berlin, and we play in front of, 1,000, 1,500 people, and they're all engaged like that. There's nothing better. But it's just, you're right. As we get out and play more and travel more, the dedication of the fan is so humbling, right? Like we talk about the band a lot, about how lucky we are to share these moments and be able to have these moments with different people. And because you never know, I can think of countless times, I've gone to shows and had a moment of an experience. I know I won't forget this, right? And stuff that I still look back fondly, and it's a moment of happiness, and being able to be that band who could possibly try to have that experience. We never take that for granted. So we're always like, hey, if there's 10 people there or 1,000 people there, right? This could be, this is the luckiest thing we have, is to be able to share our music with other people. And so we're going to play the same way, whether it's 10 or 10,000. It doesn't matter. It's a total gift. You never know when it's going to dry up too, so you never know when it could be gone. And I think that the demographic that comes to our shows and these stoner groups are the people from the era like us that went and experienced albums, or went to shows and didn't have the million distractions of cell phones, or needed that instant gratification or whatever it was, right? And so I think that the longing would be when you have the younger generation that starts to understand, like we feel like, it's our chance to, hey, that we're still doing the music that we grew up on and loved, and we could still try to get some of these that younger generation involved in some of our music. And we're noticing it a lot because our fans are bringing their kids. We're of the age where our fans are bringing their legal age kids now to our shows, and it's really cool. I think that everything in music is cyclical, and things come around, and trends find a way to resurface and whatnot. And I truly hope that, I never think that rock and roll it's never gone away, but I think that there's a desire and need for something new and fresh, even more raw and not so manufactured and so bland and boring like all the mainstream music and pop is. I think there's a true desire for that, and I think that we're starting to see a reemergence of rock and roll for sure.
That is so true. I mean, this genre is not driven by an algorithm. This genre is not driven by technology. It's plug in and play, and it's very reminiscent of what rock music was years ago, where it's real, it's authentic. And when people ask me, what is stoner rock, what is desert rock, I say, well, remember the old metal back in the early 80s and late 70s, a new wave of British metal and all those bands from back then? That's really the essence of it. That's really the attitude of it. And then, when George Lynch, formerly of Dokken, comes on my show and does an interview and says desert rock is the purest form of rock music, I mean, that is, he knows, because he's heard it, and he knows that it's plug and play and just playing on a vibe.
No, that's why some of those guys are my heroes, and the whole desert rock thing. That's why I think we take pride in the fact that we claim we called our music Texas desert rock. Yes, there's a desert in the Texas. Yes, there's a lot of desert. There's a lot of everything in Texas. It's huge, but we understand. We know that the Godfathers to us, right? For us as a band, people like Mario Lally and Fatso Jetson, who's responsible for starting getting bands like Caius and things like that together. All the generator parties out in the desert. That was such a punk rock thing. The whole just there's nowhere to play, so they went out in the desert and played. And what it spawned, musically, and then of course just creatively, they're still doing it now. I love going out there and visiting in the the high desert, where we coined our name from. There's just so much magic out there musically, and it's a beautiful area, and the people are playing music for each other. They're not playing music for mass audiences. They're literally playing music for each other and just creating to create, because it's the most beautiful thing you can possibly do.
It really is. And it's such again, with everything driven by technology, it's such a refreshing form of music, because there's no modulator, there's no laptop, making different sounds and tracks being played. I mean, it's really authentic. And I think that is on the rise. I think sometimes when things go too far in one direction, and especially now with technology, there's always a pullback and to go in the other direction. And I think that is happening. I think that's slowly emerging, where people are kind of tired of every song kind of sounding similar in the modern rock world, because everyone's chasing that algorithm to be heard. So if one thing worked for one band, everybody's got to do the same thing. Whereas with this genre, desert rock, stoner rock, there seems to be a collective idea. Everybody is proud of their own sound instead of trying to chase someone else's sound.
Yeah, and I hear interviews from a lot of different people, that come from that scene, that like if you sounded like anybody else, you get completely made fun of, and so that's a big deal, and trying to sound as original as possible. And I think that we even took you have to be very self-aware and reflective on yourself as an individual, and as musically as well. But even as a band, we kind of look at like, all right, we need to we all come from so many different places musically, and it's ironic that we are in the same room together creating, and we need to let that be our strength, as opposed to like, let's try to mold it for a genre to get on this playlist, or to, hit that algorithm, or to try to get on that. No, just those thoughts that can't even enter. I mean, you have to just let the fact that we have different influences be our strength. And it's definitely, it's helped us. Like we're very proud of this record, but I think we're even more excited about where we're going moving forward. As the more we play together, the more we learn each other, and it's getting like some of the stuff that's happening in the room and rehearsals right now is very, very exciting. We're looking forward to things as they go moving forward.
As we talk about moving forward, what's the plan? Obviously the record comes out in a couple of weeks, but what's the plan for High Desert Queen touring this year, festivals? What's on the docket?
Yeah, so we are gonna tour behind the record regionally here around the Texas area, because like I said, Texas is very big. There's a lot of areas to play around the record release, and then we're gonna head to Europe. We'll do another lengthy tour in Europe. We've got several festivals that we're playing. Stone from the Underground and in Erfurt, Germany, which is one I've always wanted to play. So it's super cool to be invited to play that one. Rock im Wald, another large festival in Germany. We tend to do very, very well in Europe. We're very well received in Europe, and so we're very excited to get back over there, because every time this is our third time over. We can't wait to get back. We're just it's the people over there. I think there's definitely still a very large scene for heavy music specifically, and we do very well over there, and so we can't wait to get back. We're going to go back to Sweden and play Fuzz Festival in November. We have some festivals here in the States we're going to play. We have some tours in the works that we can't announce just yet. That'll happen in the fall in the U.S. And so with some bands we're really excited to be touring with. So it's been really, really cool. We're like I said, we're enjoying the ride as much as we can. We stay very, very, very busy. But that's the best way to do it, because you never know when it's going to dry up. So you just play and try to experience it as much as you can.
One of the bands that gets a lot of notoriety, along with a few others too, is Clutch, and Clutch is doing a tour with Rival Sons. How much does a tour like that with a band that's outside this genre help everybody underneath the stoner rock, desert rock flag?
Yeah, I loved seeing that Rival Sons is touring with Clutch. I saw that and I go, man, that's great. Those are to me, those are the best kind of shows, right? Because I know, for example, let's talk about stoner rock, and again, you go to a stoner rock show and you've got 4 or 5 bands on the bill, and by the end, your eardrums are like, okay, I get it. It's loud and fuzzy. So I even when I'm trying to cultivate shows myself, I always try to bring people from cross genres because, well, obviously you're going to expand your fan base that way, right? Because you have somebody see one band that wouldn't have come to see you and vice versa. And it's helping everybody involved. But Rival Sons and Clutch, I mean, that's a really cool connection because they are so different, but they still kind of have the same like bluesy, that soulful kind of feel. So it's also a perfect mix. Like, I think that each's fans are really going to receive each other very well. And Rival Sons, they've exploded, in the past year or so, and they've really exploded. And I think that that's a very, very good thing for the genre, to see any rock band be elevated. Why would you not want that, right? It's good for everybody involved. And with Clutch being the legends that they are and having such a large fan base already, I think this is going to help them grow even more. And that obviously will help raise the whole scene up, I think.
The new album, Palm Reader, is out May 31st. Go get it. It's a fantastic record. Ryan, it's been a blast talking with you. It's been a blast chatting with you.
Man, it's been a pleasure talking to you as well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All of High Desert Queen's links will be in the show notes. So while you're listening, click on that stuff and go into their world. You'll get the information on where to get the album, all their social media links too as well. Give them a follow, give them a like, and go check out the music. I'm Jay Scott. This has been another episode of The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. We do appreciate it. Take care of each other. Stay safe, and we will talk soon. Thank you.
At ZocDoc, we know being a healthy adult is like living in a video game. Every day has side quests, taxes, laundry, birthdays. And just when you're leveling up, you have to book a doctor. The insurance portal crashes. They put you on hold. Your doctor doesn't take your plan. Game over. We see you. So we made booking a doctor easy. Download ZocDoc. Search by specialty, insurance, and availability. Book instantly. No cheat codes required. Find a doctor you love with ZocDoc.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 40% off site-wide, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
The Viore Core Short moves with you. With everyday versatility and classic athletic fit. It's the one short for everything your day brings. Invest in your happiness and get 20% off your first purchase at viore.com/core20. That's VUORI.com/KORE20. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions.